The best advice I could give anybody is just chill out a little bit. It's not that important, right? Be the calm guy in the room. You don't have to get over emotional. You can still get your points across. So many times I've watched really important people in life sit in a room and be very quiet for the longest time. And when they open their mouth and speak, everybody listen because they talk so rarely.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
There's in universities that have hospitality programs, and they come to conference and they get excited, but then we see them leaving to go to hotels or leaving to go to restaurants or resorts or, or even cruise lines and stuff like that. And so, our challenge is how do we get them in? How do we get them engaged? And how do we keep them engaged? And it's everything from CMA's just recently started on a grassroots level and some of the chapters, a YoPro for all the young professionals under 40, so that the chapters are putting these meet and greets together for them at places like a Top Golf or going to downtown Del Rey or things like that are away from the clubs, but allow those kids to get to know one another and be able to talk about what's going on in their clubs, because they don't have that like they would have it in a major hotel company where they're talking with 300 young managers around the world, or something like that. Just some pretty cool stuff that CMA is trying to do to engage that younger workforce and get them into our business and get them there to stay.
What do you think is, like, from your experience, like what has kept people coming into the club industry from your perspective? Like, what are some of the successes you've had in that?
So I think from our perspective, we have to look at it and say, how do we talk about the work-life balance or work-life equity? I'm not sure there's ever a real balance because it has to go one way or the other depending on seasons, but to be able to talk to people and say, you're never going to have to work an overnight shift here. You're not going to be at risk at getting transferred from one hotel to another. So you begin to focus on the things that are stable. Our benefit programs are as good as any hotel or resort company in America, with the exception of we can't get them free rooms or cheap rooms somewhere, but you can get them good golf somewhere. And so you just got to talk about all the tangibles and all the good stuff and get them involved. And then once you get them involved, I'm such a believer in continuing education for them and getting them involved early and getting them to go to stuff to meet people. And once they create that network, it's really tough to step away from that. Once you have a network of friends in an industry, you know that because you have one of the biggest networks in the industry, and you may have stepped out of what you were doing as a superintendent, but you haven't stepped away from the industry because it's an industry you're connected to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that we talk about all the time, the students and, interns or young assistants, is just that your success in this industry is not going to be a linear pathway to being a superintendent always.
Right.
You might take a backward step, you might take a sideward step and end up in roles and career pathways you never thought existed, because the industry is so vast. There's so much potential here, on the service side, professional service side. And fortunately, I guess I was dumb. I had some dumb luck to find out that there was this unique niche pathway for myself. But yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing that I think, and I lived it myself as a superintendent, is actually looking on the team, like the existing team. Like, you don't necessarily have to go to a college, university program to inspire somebody to look at this as a career pathway. Sometimes it's just encouraging the people that are doing a good job and show some of those initial employability skills and soft skills and interest in the career. And I think the industry as a whole has probably done a poor job of that. At least I can say on the superintendent side of not nurturing existing team members.
Yeah, so I would say to you that CMA was just like that for a long, long time, and we had this very linear. You either had to be a GM or a club manager, or else you probably weren't in our association. And going back 15 years or so ago, I think we recognized that and began to say, how do we branch out? And I mean, if you think about it, 15 or 20 years ago, there was hardly any club in America that had a communications director. Now I'm sitting here and we have 3 people in that office handling all the marketing and communication for us. Well, those people are naturals to get involved in the CMAA and let them have a different career path to grow. Same thing with all of our catering professionals, when they, all of the creative people, member services professionals. We even look at CFOs and people like that. If you want to be more than a CFO, let's give you that path to grow through CMAA and get you that continuing education. And so the one thing that has helped that particular association grow is not the linear path that we used to always follow, but all the branches on the tree that you're now allowing people to come up to and through to get into your association.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I started recording because I thought this was a great kind of starting way into the podcast. And I didn't send you any itinerary because I find that these are the best ways to engage guests on the show. So you're on the hot seat. You are the first general manager on Leadership on the Links, and it can only go down after you are on here. And I plan to have many of my general manager friends that I've connected with here in the industry. But for those that don't know who you are, why don't you give a little bit of a background on your career path as succinctly as you possibly can?
Succinctly is tough when you've been in it as long as I've been, but
spring chicken, come on now.
So, I'll just give you a quick, the last 30 years, having opened and transitioned the club from being developer owned to member owned at Colleton River down on Hilton Head or just off of Hilton Head. Did that for a little more than 5 years, had an opportunity to go down and open the lodge at Sea Island, redo the 3 golf courses down there and redo another clubhouse. Unfortunately, 9/11 happened after that. And 2 things that happened after 9/11. You weren't selling multi-million-dollar lots to the top 1/2 or 1%ers in the world, and people weren't paying $700 a night for hotel rooms. And so I was given the opportunity to step away, and I did. That's when I landed in the Woodlands, Texas. And so for 11 years, I worked for the Woodlands Development Company, and during that time managed 6 golf courses, 7 golf courses, 6 clubhouses, and a 440-room resort. Back in 2007, sold 5 of the golf courses, kept the 2 high-end ones, Carlton Woods, the club at Carlton Woods Nicholas, the club at Carlton Woods Fazio, developed those out. Always kind of been a developer guy. And then when that project came to an end, I was given the opportunity to come to South Florida, where I've been for the last 12 years at the club at Quail Ridge. And we took a 40-year-old club that had fallen asleep on itself, and we showed them how to reimagine it. And over the last 12 years, when we're done in a year or so, we will have touched every building on here. Will be new. Both golf courses will be new. We will have reestablished their legacy for their real estate and really set this club up for the long-term sustainable success. And so that's the best quick synopsis I can give you on my career.
We could go down a lot of pathways here. And as somebody who has seen the club at Quail Ridge, I'm from the North, right? So I'm a Yankee, and times when you come down to Florida, when you're not exposed to community development, sometimes you don't know what to expect, right? But I remember the quality, the attention to detail of your facility was incredible. And whether it's a new tennis facility, whether it's the fitness center, the golf courses that you guys are rebranded, and especially the one going through with Dana and Jason right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, the transformation, I'm sure your members on a day-to-day are just tickled to death and just excited about the future of the club. And kudos to you for leading the charge.
Well, thank you. It only happens if you can convince the board and then ultimately the members to do the right thing. we've had a lot of success with that, and we've had a lot of very good boards and committees through the year, and a tremendous team that's made it happen. And I give them all the credit. It's I might have a little vision, or I might have an idea here or there, but the boots on the ground is what really makes it happen.
You'll find this interesting. About a year ago, I had a company do some research on our target audience, right? And general managers, and what are things that general managers are looking for, and what do they inquire about? What interests do they have, right? So I could kind of formulate my conversations that align with general manager, right? And then they did the same sort of study on superintendents. Okay, what interests do superintendents have? And you know what the number one thing is they found with superintendents, what they're looking for?
I have no idea.
Alignment with the general manager.
Makes perfect sense.
And so, I want to jump into that right now is, from your experience, how have you been able to align well with your management team? And let's start with that. And then also from the executive level with your board and your members.
Yeah. So I like to say that in my role, you have to be really good at managing up, managing down, and managing sideways. And so for me, managing up is managing the board and their expectations, board and committees. Managing down is all of your department heads and team members, and then managing sideways is with all of your directors to make sure that you're in total alignment. My whole life, I've tried to hire people that were really good at what they did, give them clear direction and expectation about where we want to go as an organization, and then get the hell out of their way and try to stay out of the way. And so my role is to become the coach that establishes the playbook, but then also their best cheerleader to help them succeed.
I also think, though, it takes an inquisitive person to understand the roles of each department head, and our audience is primarily golf course superintendents. And I hear oftentimes, well, they don't understand what we're dealing with. They don't understand Mother Nature. They don't understand, what we're dealing with. So it's taken a bit of, reflection on your part to really understand that role. Talk about that a little bit of, how you've established those relationships with your department heads and how you've learned their craft, even if that wasn't necessarily your background or forte.
I know a lot more about grasses than I ever thought I was going to have to know in my life. I know a lot more about equipment than I ever thought I was going to have to know, because I'm willing to sit in the room with the leaders of those departments, our directors of agronomy and our superintendents, and listen and understand what their needs are. When we're talking about right now, we're talking about a new $3 million equipment package here, and really trying to drill down and understand the need for all that equipment. And okay, let's put it against the current equipment. Tell me what's being retired, what's coming in, and help me understand the use and need of it, so that we can get to a place of whether it's a lease or a buy. Lease on a short term, if you know you're going to wear it out in 4 or 5 years. Buy if you know you're going to hold it for 7 to 10 years, whatever it is. And just taking that time to really understand their needs, but then to make sure you get them what they need to be successful. And then I can remember sitting with Eric Bauer in Texas and going through his early order program. And he was so proud of, he would bring in the best spreadsheets ever and sit me down and go through and tell me how much money he was going to save me. Now, he was spending a hell of a lot of money, but he always started it with how much money he was going to save me. And it was a learning lesson for me to understand how important it was for him to be able to make that presentation and own that process. And so then you buy into it and you let them go.
Yeah. One thing I give you, again, I'm like sucking up here, but in our most recent engagement, one thing that I really appreciated is your ability to handle high stress, situations when maybe a committee is in alignment with the direction of things, and you just kind of sat back, just listened in, and I tried to mimic that same thing in our engagement together. And I took a lot from that, of sometimes just it's good to just sit back and let people speak, listen to them before engaging, whether they're right or wrong, just listening to them. How did you develop that sort of skill set?
Certainly over time, I was one of those guys who always felt like I had to speak as much as everybody else in the room, or that I had to have the last say of anything in the room. And I remember sitting with a gentleman that was very successful in a board meeting one day, and he looked at me and he said, "Bill, silence is a tactic." And it just kind of hit home. He said, if somebody says something to you and they're going at you aggressively, or they make you an offer that you don't think is right, or present something that you don't think is right, if you take a pause before you answer, it creates a very uncomfortable situation for the person that just delivered that message. And it's become a very useful tactic in my ability to negotiate and deal with boards and committees through the years. The other thing I learned, and not from that same gentleman, but from another one, is the first guy that gets mad loses. How many times have any of us been in board meetings or committee meetings where things get a little bit heated? And I've been in some meetings where my directors around me have gotten fired up, and when they get fired up, they can't think right because their mind gets jumbled and they can't think right. And so I coach everybody and I tell them the first person that gets mad loses. You've got to keep your stuff together. And so it's easier just to take a pause and just go at it from a very calm and rational manner, and you're going to win every time.
Yeah. What do you see in your experience? What have you seen as being some of the biggest obstacles, superintendents face, in their roles, and whether that's dealing with members, committees, just operations? What have you seen as being some of the biggest obstacles that they've faced? And on the flip side, what are some of the solutions to that you've seen, or creative solutions that you've seen your superintendents kind of employ?
Yeah, so many guys in the golf course maintenance industry come out of school with just a ton of knowledge on grasses. I've talked with directors of agronomy that they would get over my head in a minute in terms of their knowledge of stolons and how this and that and on and on. Uh, but when they sat in a room with a committee, they were gibberish. They couldn't get it out of their mouth, right? And so I think the biggest thing that industry needs is more time understanding how to deal effectively with boards and committees, and how to make that proper presentation. And just like they do on the golf course, when they're planning so far ahead for the next aerification or the next top dressing or the next verticutting or whatever it may be, you got to plan that way when they're coming to a meeting with either me, the committee, or the board. They've got to have their homework done. And so many times those guys run in right off the golf course, see their pants, not ready to go. And so you've just got to take the time to make the preparation.
Yeah. I know I can think of a couple instances myself, literally coming from fixing irrigation or jumping off a sprayer and knowing I've got to get to a committee meeting, largely because I probably didn't have somebody that was doing the work, which is as a look in the mirror at myself of saying, hey, you got to develop somebody so you're not on the sprayer, whether they have a turf degree or not. You
Right.
gotta figure out ways to delegate and develop people. And you've sat in so many different green committee meetings and search process and things like that. What do you think are the top 3 or 4 things you hear, consistently from members, about golf course superintendents or their operations that they can improve on and focus on?
That's a great question. Every club's different and every committee's different. Too many times you get into a committee meeting and there's always 1 or 2 committee members that think they're smarter than the superintendent, and they never are. But you have to figure out how to manage them and to deal with them. And so the best thing to do with them is to take them on a ride around and take those guys that have that sense that they really know what they're doing, take them out, take them on a ride around, and help them understand how you have the knowledge. And then by giving them a little extra knowledge, they'll have an appreciation for what you do. I think, but maybe I lost your question. Maybe I kind of ran off
Good.
course there. But I think that's, from my perspective, anytime we have a member that's bitching about something, I said, come on, let's go together. Show me. And when you do that, it just neutralizes them because now I'm going to take them out on the golf course. They can point it out to me. If they're right, they're right, and we'll find a way to fix it. If they're wrong, or if it's just something they think is not right, then we're going to give them the right knowledge to help them understand.
One of the things that we found in our superintendent employment study was about how to communicate better, how to essentially build relationships with their stakeholders, and it ended up being the top skill superintendents felt like they needed to do to move up in their careers, whether in their existing job or the next one. And I think visibility is such a critical skill. And not that everybody has to be at the first tee every week, but not being afraid to pull such and such member to go for a course ride around and just sit and listen and show them. Sometimes maybe the overall argument or the volume of that point can be really minimized by just doing something simple like that.
Every time it can be minimized by doing something simple like that. Yeah. The other thing I would say to you is going back to the preparation is, we recently went through a search with you and you brought us 5 fantastic candidates. It's really interesting to me to watch how prepared or unprepared those 5 candidates were in their level of ability to deal effectively in a search committee room, for example, like that. There was certainly 3 of the 5 that were head and shoulders above the other 2, and you look at that and you say, those other 2 really need to refine those skills to get that bigger, better job, for them to be able to sit in that room and sell themselves.
I was gonna, and I was hoping we would get to this point, is when you reflect on that, most recent superintendent search, what were some of the things that surprised you, about candidates in general? What excited you, and what tips would you have for people that are going through a process?
Well, I think maybe what surprised me was the quality of the 5 candidates that you brought, because you brought 5 really, really good candidates, and I think I'm aware that 4 of them have already been placed elsewhere or something like that. So you must be doing something right. You had the right guys in the room. It just wasn't the absolute right fit for us. And but they all had absolute ability to do the job. Several of them didn't have the ability to sell themselves as well. There was a young guy in the room who came across so nervous. It was really hard for us to believe that he could sit in a room of committee members or sit in a boardroom or stand up in front of the members and make a presentation if he had to about anything that we were doing. Guy has all the talent in the world. He's just got to develop those skills a little bit better than what he has now. And so, there was a couple I would probably put in that category. One maybe was a little too casual with himself and how he handled the interview. And then the other 2 were ultra professional in how they handled themselves, more than I think we could have ever expected. And so it became a real tough job to get right down to who you wanted, but we ultimately settled on what we think is the absolute right candidates.
Well, I laugh, and I use the example of our in-persons at the end when we were doing the scorecards, and you and I shared scorecards and they were exactly the same. And I think about alignment with GM is such an important thing. And in these processes, right? Because it's a team. And I think you're the person that's working with them side by side. So it's important to me. But on the superintendent side, I think at times we all do this. It's not just superintendents. We all do this. We end up focusing on our silo and how important that is in comparison to other things. But I find that the most successful superintendents are able to look at we before me and really, I think, line towards a vision, a commitment to the overall member experience, not just golf. And I'm kind of curious, how do you coach your department heads to think about the we before just me?
So a couple of things we require here. We have a fairly broad operation here. In addition to the golf course budget and maintaining the golf course, we maintain 600 acres total in here from a landscape perspective. We have a team of 50 on there and a director of landscape operations. And that's a big operation. Then we also handle all the community maintenance. We'll do everything from change a light bulb to remodel your kitchen and anything in between. So I make sure those 3 individuals, which all work out of the same complex down there, have a team meeting once a week to talk about, we're going through a community irrigation replacement right now. Then you're building golf courses right up against that new irrigation that's going in, and general maintenance is involved in helping both sides in every part. If those three people aren't on the same page, going back to the we are never going to be successful. And so require them to have a regular Wednesday morning meeting of those three department heads as a coordination meeting for them. Then as it relates to our golf course project that's going on, it's a huge project because not only are we reimagining the golf course, we're redoing 2.2 miles of hedges and fence line all the way around the property. And so that coordination has to occur there. And so the director of general maintenance, the director of community landscaping comes to our weekly OAC meetings, so owner, architect, contractor meetings, so that they're fully aware of everything that we're doing and what we're working on that week and the next week and the week after. And then the last thing for me is doing a regular ride around with Josh and making sure that whether it's on the South Course, which is just getting its summer agronomic practices done in a big way, or riding the North Course and letting him point out kind of what they've achieved and what they're working on. So making sure that you're spending time with your department heads to fully understand where they're at and to support their needs. And I think that's critical to success of being in alignment with one another.
Awesome. Awesome. A little bit lighter conversation. So you've got to see some pretty cool facilities throughout your career, and you've been involved in the association level. What do you love about the industry as a whole? I mean, and because you've shared that with your daughter, who's also a general manager, right? So you obviously love the industry. So what about it really stands out for you?
Well, I think for me, it's the industry has certainly been my life for the last 40 years, and it's the camaraderie in our industry. The fact that if you're in the hotel business and you're running a Hilton, it's hard for you to pick up the phone and call the Marriott across the street and say, what was your occupancy last night? But I can pick up the phone and call any other club on the corner down here. And by the way, in Palm Beach County, there is a club on every corner. So, but I can pick up the phone and call them and get an answer about anything. I'm on a group text with 23 GMs down here that we constantly talking with each other. We have a dinner that we all get together on before the start of the season and at the end of the season. And at those dinners, there's generally 25 or 30 of us. You're either required to tell a joke or a funny story about something that happened at your club. And inevitably, it's always a crazy ass story about something that happened at your club. And it just builds that camaraderie that you can't get in any other business. And to be able to pick up that phone and call people anywhere in the country after you've been at this a little while and know they're going to answer your phone call and call you back and either help you get a member on or answer a question about, inevitably we all have members that belong to other clubs, right? And they come down here, well, at my club or at my other club. And so you call and say, tell me what you're doing there. And you're able to call a little bit of BS after you've had that conversation with the GM.
I joke that if somebody wants to get rich and their club might be going down the tubes, they need to have a reality TV show of what goes on at clubs, because it'd be topping the charts immediately.
Well, I've always threatened to write the book, and I've got a working title called Behind the Gates and Over the Wall.
That's it. I like it. Man. I want to jump into our quick segment we call Chip Shots and hopefully have some fun here. But to kick it off, if you had to pick a favorite foursome, who would it be with and where?
Geez, a favorite foursome. So probably be my Uncle Pat that got me in this industry. It would probably be my current CFO who works with me, best CFO I've ever worked with, hands down, is as good a number two as there is anywhere in the country. And then the fourth one would be my daughter, who I just admire for how well she's done in the industry as a 40-year-old leading a fairly large club in Texas, and just her whole mindset is just right. And she's where she needs to be. And I think she's got a really long runway. And where I'd want to be, clearly I'd like to stay in Butler Cabin and play Augustus.
Yeah. See if I can hook you up.
I missed it twice. I two opportunities to play Augusta, one with the president of Easy Go and another one with another gentleman there in Augusta, and something happened both times. It didn't make it happen. So still on my bucket list. I'll make it happen before I retire.
There you go. If somebody's out there listening, please fulfill this man's bucket list. All right. What's your favorite food you've had at a club?
Favorite food that I've had at a club? Geez, so many. Probably anything from the steakhouse at Colton Allison at the Lodge at Sea Island. I had a executive chef that we hired from Gallagher Steakhouse. He was doing 500 covers a night. He came to work for me. We only wanted to do 70 covers a night in that steakhouse. He thought he was on vacation. He now cooks for guys on the tour. He just had the frat house over at the Open where there's always 4 or 5 guys stay. He's the chef for that frat house. And Chef Parker, they call him the golfing chef. Golf Digest has written an article about him, and he's just world class. And so anything Chef Parker wanted to cook for me, I'd be ready for it.
You need to hook me up, man. What's up with this? You're like holding back on some of your connections. What clubs you playing these days?
I'm playing TaylorMade right now. It's time for a new set. I'm not sure what I want, but the problem is they sit over here in the corner and they don't get out of the corner nearly as enough as they should, particularly this time of year. Normally I try to play 9 holes on Thursday afternoon with a couple guys, and just this year we've had too much going on. And then I try to play Saturday mornings with a group, and I haven't played hardly any because we just recently bought a place up in the Carolinas and going back and forth up there a lot. So my next best one is I'm going to Pronghorn in about a month and a half. A friend of mine is a former owner out there, and we're going out there and play 4 or 5 days with a group of guys and have a little fun out there in Bend, Oregon. So.
Yeah, not a bad place to be kicking it around.
Yeah. Not bad at all.
All right. So last one for you is you guys have a pretty outstanding pro shop, by the way. The collection there is pretty special. What's your favorite clothing brand in a golf shop?
So I'd say right now for me, it's probably Peter Millar, just because I'm a big guy and their double XL shirts fit me right. So I certainly like their stuff. There's some other real good brands out there, but we sell a heck of a lot of Peter Millar.
Yeah. Good. If people want to get to know you a little bit more, they want to find out about what you got going on, where can they find you?
Pretty easy. I'm on LinkedIn. It's William E. Langley on LinkedIn. I'm on, I guess I'm on everything, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. But I'm maybe not on there as much as I ought to be. And some days if somebody sends me something out on LinkedIn, it may be a day or two before I see it and get back to them. But just life gets in the way sometimes.
If you were giving your former self some advice, about the career, about the industry, what would that be?
The best advice I could give anybody is just chill out a little bit. It's not that important, right? Just just be the calm guy in the room. Be the calm guy in the room. You don't have to get over emotional. You can still get your points across. So many times I've watched really important people in life sit in a room and be very quiet for the longest time. And when they open their mouth and speak, everybody listen because they talk so rarely. And we've got one now. We've got a board member that's also a board member at Baltusrol, and the gentleman is as nice a man as you want to see and fully supportive of the club. Doesn't engage a lot, but when he speaks from knowledge, and people listen. And instead of just feeling like he has to fill dead space, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, great advice. You're coaching me up now. I appreciate it. What did we miss? I always like to end this a little bit with, what haven't we talked about that you wanted to get across, if anything?
Well, if there's anything I want to get across, it's that our industry is a fantastic industry. You get to know people, getting to know you over the last couple of years now. I think we'll be friends for life, and it's just about making those connections in life. I've got friends at CMA I only see once a year at a national conference, and we will reconnect, and it's just like we haven't missed a beat for the whole year. You're caught up immediately, even them or their wife or anybody else. I like to think that you go for the education, but you really get educated at the social time, either before or after, or at the cocktail party afterwards, is when you're going to make the most connections and when you're going to learn the most about what everybody else is doing at their clubs. Never be afraid to engage, and don't be a shrinking violet, and you'll be very successful in this industry.
Love the shrinking violet. I hear that periodically. One of my favorite quotes. I hear that a lot in this industry. Don't be a shrinking violet.
Yeah. Put yourself out there. That's, if you want to be a success, put yourself out there.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.